There is a man sitting across from you in an unmarked office somewhere outside Moscow. He hasn't introduced himself. He has no nameplate. He slides a single sheet of paper across the desk, looks at you once, and says nothing. You either sign it or you leave. If you leave, this conversation never happened. If you sign it, your old life is over. Not metaphorically, legally, officially over. Welcome to the first step of becoming part of the GRU. Glavnoy Razvidatalnoya, Upravlenia, Russian military intelligence, one of the most feared and least understood intelligence organizations in human history. Most people have heard of the FSB, Russia's domestic security service, the successor to the KGB. Fewer people know that the GRU has always operated in parallel, and in many ways above it. While the FSB watches Russians, the GRU watches the world. It has its own special forces, its own satellite network, its own cyber division, its own assassination units, and its own chain of command that answers, ultimately, to one person. Not the Prime Minister, not the FSB director. The President, that's the organization you just signed up for. And right now, at the very bottom of it, you are nothing. The selection process for GRU candidacy doesn't begin with an application. You don't walk into a recruitment office. In most cases, you are identified. Military academies, elite university programs, scientific institutions. GRU talent scouts operate inside all of them, watching students for years before anyone makes contact. They're looking for a specific profile, high intelligence, psychological stability under pressure, no strong ideological convictions in either direction. True believers are unpredictable, and the GRU does not like unpredictable. They want people who are disciplined, adaptable, and most importantly, comfortable with ambiguity. People who can hold two contradictory truths in their head at the same time and function normally. If you've ever been flagged for exceptional performance and then quietly approached by someone who seemed vaguely official but never explained exactly who they worked for, there's a chance the process had already begun. Once you're formally entered into candidacy, the testing is relentless. Physical standards are comparable to Spetsnaz entry requirements, and the GRU runs its own Spetsnaz units, so that comparison is not accidental, but the psychological battery is what breaks most candidates. Sleep deprivation scenarios. Ethical dilemma frameworks designed specifically to have no clean answer. Interrogation simulations where the goal isn't to break your cover story, it's to watch how you rebuild yourself afterward. Candidates are lied to, deceived, and manipulated deliberately, and then observed to see whether they become paranoid, resentful, or whether they simply adapt and continue functioning. The ones who adapt continue. The ones who ask too many questions about why they're being tested the way they are, they're quietly removed. The GRU does not explain itself. If you need an explanation, you are not the right person. Assuming you survive selection, your first formal rank places you at the absolute foundation of a structure so compartmentalized that most people inside it never understand its full shape. You are given a cover identity. This is not a code name for field use. This is a constructed life, a background, a professional history that exists in databases, contacts who will verify your story if anyone checks. In some postings, you will use this identity so consistently for so long that junior colleagues will know you only by it. Your real name becomes something you say in very specific rooms, to very specific people, on very specific occasions. Outside of those rooms, you are whoever they need you to be. The psychological training you underwent was partly to prepare you for this, because identity dissolution, the gradual erosion of the line between your real self and your constructed self, is one of the primary reasons. GRU officers historically have broken down defected, or disappeared. Your early postings are about observation and reporting, almost nothing else. You watch, you document, you pass information up a chain whose upper links you cannot see. You are given targets: a foreign diplomat, a technology conference, an academic institution with defense research connections. And your job is to understand the environment, map the people in it, and identify potential points of leverage. Not to act on them yet, just to understand them. Patience is the GRU's most valued operational quality, and they test yours constantly. You may spend 18 months cultivating a single informant relationship before anyone asks you to do anything with it. That is not a failure of the mission. That is the mission. What nobody tells you at this stage, what you slowly come to understand on your own, is that you are being watched just as carefully as your targets are. Your handlers are assessing you in real time. Every report you file, every decision you make in the field, every interpersonal dynamic you develop with an asset is being evaluated against a profile they built on you during selection. They already know your stress responses. They know your ethical thresholds. They know the specific circumstances under which your judgment tends to degrade. And they are deliberately putting you in those circumstances at low-stakes moments to see how you handle them before they ever trust you with something that actually matters. By the time you reach the rank of senior case officer running your first small network of assets across a city or region, you will have internalized something that changes you permanently. You will understand that trust is not a feeling in this world. It is a calculation. Every relationship you maintain with assets, with colleagues, with superiors is a structure of mutual leverage and mutual risk. The GRU did not make you cynical. It made you precise. And right now, that precision is the only thing keeping you and everyone around you alive. By the time you reach the upper architecture of the GRU, the work looks nothing like what you did in the field. There are no dead drops, no surveillance routes, no 3 a.m. meetings in parking garages with nervous informants who need reassurance and cash. That world, the world you came from, is now something you read about in reports written by people a decade behind you. Your domain is different, larger, less visible, and considerably more dangerous in ways that have nothing to do with the physical. At the department head level, you are managing entire regional intelligence programs, not individual operations, programs. A program might encompass simultaneous human networks across 6 countries, a coordinated signals intelligence collection effort targeting a NATO communications infrastructure, and a set of influence operations designed to shape political outcomes in elections you will never be publicly associated with. You brief generals who brief ministers who brief the president. The information that travels up that chain started, in some cases, with a junior officer in a city you've never visited, running an asset you've never met, inside a target environment you designed from a desk in Moscow. The distance between cause and effect in this world is enormous, and learning to operate comfortably across that distance is what separates the people who rise from the people who stall. The further up you go, the more you understand. The GRU's foundational philosophy, which is this: the military intelligence apparatus does not exist to support Russian foreign policy. Russian foreign policy exists within the space that military intelligence has already shaped. By the time a Russian diplomat sits across from a foreign counterpart and begins a negotiation, the GRU has ideally already spent months, sometimes years, building the conditions of that conversation. Who the foreign counterpart trusts, what pressures they're operating under, which of their colleagues are reachable, which of their institutions are compromised. The diplomat doesn't know this. They don't need to. The GRU is not in the business of sharing credit. At the deputy directorate level, you sit at the intersection of every intelligence stream the organization runs simultaneously. human intelligence from field officers across 4 continents. Signals intelligence from a satellite and interception network that rivals anything the NSA operates publicly. Cyber operations from Unit 26165 and Unit 74455. Departments whose names you now know well. Departments whose work appears in Western intelligence reports under the name Fancy Bear and Sandworm. Departments that have disrupted power grids, interfered with democratic elections, and penetrated the most sensitive government and military networks on the planet. You are not running these operations directly, but you understand their architecture. You understand how a cyber intrusion in one country feeds targeting data for a human operation in another, which shapes the information environment for an influence campaign in a third. The full picture, assembled at your level, is something very few people on Earth ever see. What the rank also brings, and what no briefing ever prepares you for, is the weight of the active measures portfolio. Active measures, active nie meropriatia, is the GRU's term for operations that go beyond intelligence collection into the deliberate manipulation of reality. Disinformation campaigns built on real intelligence so that the false parts are impossible to separate from the true. Assassination programs framed as accidents, suicides, or the work of third parties. Political funding that moves through 12 layers of financial architecture before it touches a candidate's campaign in a country the Kremlin wants to influence. By the time you are signing off on active measures operations at this level, you are not asking whether what you are doing is ethical. That question was resolved or dissolved somewhere around rank 4. The question you are asking is whether it will work, whether it can be traced, and whether the strategic benefit justifies the operational exposure. Those are the only 3 questions that matter. The chief of the GRU sits in a building in Moscow known inside the intelligence community as the Aquarium, a name that carries a specific meaning. In an aquarium, everything is visible, everything is watched, everything exists within a controlled environment designed by someone else. The irony of the name is intentional, or at least it should be, because the man at the top of the GRU is simultaneously the most powerful intelligence officer in Russia and the most exposed. He knows where everybody is buried, sometimes literally. He knows the details of operations that would destabilize governments if they became public. He knows which Russian officials have been compromised by foreign services, and he knows which foreign officials have been compromised by his own. That knowledge is his power. It is also his vulnerability. Every previous GRU chief has ended their tenure in one of a small number of ways. Retirement into obscurity, removal by political forces, death under circumstances that were officially explained and unofficially understood, or in rare cases, a quiet defection to the West that the Russian government denies to this day. You have survived everything the GRU put in front of you. The selection, the field, the networks, the active measures, the politics. You sit now at the top of an organization that has operated continuously since 1918, that survived Stalin's purges, that outlasted the Soviet Union itself, that has reformed, restructured, and reconstituted itself. Every time the Russian state tried to bring it to heel, the GRU does not die. It adapts. And somewhere below you, right now, in an unmarked office, with no nameplate on the desk, a man is sliding a sheet of paper across to someone new. Someone young. Someone who doesn't yet understand what they're signing. You were that person once. You barely remember him,